trial of communism should have finished that. It didn't happen, and therefore we are not out of that crisis. And that is the reason why we have Putin. That is the reason why you have Obama. It is still going on. The Cold War is going on. It's going on the streets of Moscow now. It's going on the streets of Tehran. It's going on really in America as well.
Let me give you, if I might, an example. They have a particular program they want to implement, and they go in and they ask for everything. They ask for everything, and they're aggressive about it. They push ahead. And so they push until they get opposition, starts to build up against it. And at that given moment, they evaluate the opposition. They say, well, is there any strength to it? Will it last? Will we be able to endure it? Or do we push ahead even farther? If the movement grows up to where it can do them harm, they then back off and say, well, maybe we don't want it all. Let's compromise a little. Let us get along together now, because I'm willing to give up what I've asked for totally for just a bit of it. Aren't you willing to give up a bit that we can work together? Next thing you know, another month goes by, another year, and here they come again.
They'll just incrementally get what they want. Now, the classic example is Obamacare. Now, that was designed 100% by Democratic Socialists of America, Marxist group. They pushed it on America through Quentin Young, their member, who was the mentor of your president, Mr. Obama. But more than that, Quentin Young was a 40-year veteran of the Communist Party USA. So they got the first steps. The Affordable Health Care Act pushed through in 2009. It wasn't single-payer health care. It wasn't 100% socialised health care, which is what they're after, but they got as much as they could get. Now, if you read their publications, they are boasting it's going to fail. It's not going to do the job. It's going to let people down. But that's great, because then they're going to blame the greedy insurance companies and the nasty doctors, and then they're going to push full on for single-payer health care. They're using the dialectic, they're using Lenin, they're using Hegel. Get what you can get, reach a compromise, then when the opposition backs off, then you go forward for the next step. And you just keep on doing that and doing that and doing that till you get what you want.
That strategy is what they use on every issue, every time. We will see a single-payer system implemented by our government in the near future. As Obamacare collapses, as it was designed to, they will step up to fix the problem of high premiums and a disgruntled people with more government. We never seem to learn. We keep compromising, keep giving up ground, and keep playing strictly defense, which is why we always lose.
We are in a dependent state, and when you go to the voting booth, you get to vote your self-interest. So, real issue, a real concern when you don't have a voting base with some skin in the game, as much to lose as to gain. What we know from history is that when you tip the scale at 51%, now you are talking about a license to steal. You're talking about that 51% tyranny that de Tocqueville was so concerned about. The democracy, for all its benefits, the main challenge is you get to the point where you have a 51% tyranny.
I think that it's underappreciated in our society just how extensive the damage of the welfare state is. And I think that when you look into the heart of the liberal and what they do to our society in the name of social justice or in the name of equality, it's evil will.
When a government is working as hard as possible to create dependency in their citizens, you know that their real aim is to eliminate freedom, because no man is truly free that is unable to provide for himself.
The dollar in America today, it takes 98 of them to buy what $1 did in 1913 when the Federal Reserve System was enacted into law. That is theft.
The fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto is to create a central bank. Ours was created in 1913 and is called the Federal Reserve.
You say Federal Reserve, and I think most Americans think that's part of the government. But of course, the Federal Reserve Bank isn't part of the government. The Federal Reserve is a private bank.
It's not a government institution. It's as Federal Express.
I'm sure the individuals involved would fit nicely into my chart if we knew their names, but we have allowed them to remain anonymous. They also tell us we do not have the authority to audit them to see how much of our money they have printed, even though with each bill they print, inflation soars. At the current rate of inflation, which most think is very modest, things go up in price 10 times every 50 years. My grandfather bought a nice house in 1915 for $4,500. My father bought a nice house in 1965 for $45,000. And my house today is $450,000. So if the rates of inflation just stay like they are, my grandson's house will cost him $4.5 million, and his grandson's $45 million.
Inflation is a tax. It's a hidden tax. And so it steals from people who have saved. When they finally retire at the end of a lifespan, all this money that they put aside doesn't buy anything anymore.
Houses haven't gotten more expensive. The dollar has just lost 97% of its value over the last 100 years. 1 ounce of gold would buy 300 loaves of bread 2,000 years ago, and an ounce of gold today will buy 300 loaves of bread. Prices rarely change. What's happened is the Federal Reserve has been quietly stealing our wealth while we believe their lie that inflation is normal. It wasn't normal for the first 6,000 years of Earth history. It magically started in America in 1913. Our economic system today is based on Keynesian economics. John Maynard Keynes is the father of it. If there is any doubt to the purposefulness of our economic situation, listen to this. He said, quote, "By a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of their citizens." Lenin was certainly right. There is no subtler, no surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch its currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction, and it does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose, unquote. The second plank of the Communist Manifesto is to implement a graduated income tax. Ours was placed into law in 1914.
If you establish a tax that is based on the government's power to determine what percentage of your income it's going to take away from you, how much of your income does it control? Well, that means the government controls 100% of your income. If that is the situation, you are no longer a free person. You are a slave, and you live on an allowance from your government.
When Ronald Reagan came into office, the top tax rate was 70%. When he left office, he had cut it down to 27%. During that same time, revenue to the government doubled. The lie of the left is that increasing taxes on the rich will help stimulate the economy, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's all a strategic part of the plan to create more dependency. People wonder why our free enterprise system isn't working anymore. It's because the inflation, taxation, and regulation is effectively killing its productivity and its ability to create wealth. So now people talk about redistributing the wealth we have instead of creating more. Every single person in the world could be a millionaire. Wealth is created by hard work, creativity, and ingenuity. The lie that it's a fixed pie is perpetrated by those that seek to pit the have-nots against the haves. If you add up all the debts and obligations our government has placed on us, every single individual owes over $650,000, which obviously isn't ever going to be paid back.